Lacey Harper had ridden more trails than she cared to count, yet every return to her ranch felt lonelier than the last. Once, laughter had echoed through the valley, her parents' voices, her brother's songs, but time had carried them away, leaving only fences, weathered boards, and her own stubborn will. Folks in town called her the widow Cowgirl, though she had never been married. The name fit, in a way. She lived as if widowed by the world itself. On the evening after a heavy storm, she found herself patrolling the land, searching for damage, unaware of what the rain had uncovered. The storm had torn branches, washed gullies deep, and pushed stones loose from the ridge. Dust, her old sorrel mare, picked her way carefully over the mud. Lacey leaned in the saddle, scanning the ground, when she saw it, an opening where rock had collapsed. A hole, half hidden by weeds, yawned against the hillside. She pulled up, frowning. That wasn't here yesterday. Sliding down, she crouched close. The air rising from the dark was cool and ancient, smelling of earth long undisturbed. Lacey pressed her palm to the stone, heart beating faster. This was no animal burrow. This was a doorway. For a long while she stood, uncertain. She had fences to mend, calves to check, chores unending. Yet her eyes refused to leave that shadowed crack. The West taught her patience, but it also taught her when chance knocked, you listened. Fetching her lantern from the saddlebag, she struck a match. Flame-licked glass, glowing warm. She ducked low, careful of her hat brim, and stepped inside. The earth swallowed her footsteps, and the world above faded into silence. Cool dampness settled on her skin. The tunnel stretched deeper than she expected, rough-hewn, as though shaped once by tools, not nature alone. The lantern light wavered, showing old timbers shoring the passage. They had aged, cracked, but still standing, smelling of forgotten sweat. "A mine," Lacey whispered, voice bouncing off stone. Her father had spoken once of prospectors who combed the valley, digging, dreaming, vanishing when luck turned. She thought it only stories. Now here it lay, beneath her boots. Each step forward carried a weight of history, of men who'd swung picks where she now walked. Dust snorted from the entrance, the sound muffled. "Stay there, girl," Lacey called softly. The cave bent inward, deeper into a silence thick as prayer. After some 20 paces, the tunnel widened. Lacey lifted her lantern high. Against the far wall rested a wooden crate, rotted but intact. Her heart kicked. She approached slowly, each breath steady, as if she feared waking something. The lid had split, iron nails rusted through. With the point of her knife she pried the wood. It gave with a groan, dust spilling out. Inside lay canvas sacks, their seams cracked, and beneath them gleam gold. Not just dust or flakes, but stamped coins, dull with age but shining where the light struck. Lacey's throat tightened. Fortune had been sleeping under her land. She knelt, fingers trembling as she lifted one coin. It bore the face of liberty, dated decades past. More coins spilled beneath, enough to fill both hands. Yet with the rush of discovery came a chill. Why had it been left? No prospector abandoned gold willingly. She replaced the coin, covering it again with canvas. Secrets that survived storms and silence often carried curses. Still, she felt the pull. That gold could save her ranch, pay debts, secure a future. But greed drew enemies as surely as blood drew wolves. She lowered the lantern, whispering, "What have you done, Harper?" She left the crate unopened, marking the spot with a stone. As she stepped back into daylight, the world seemed brighter, harsher, dust-wickered, restless. Lacey stroked the mare's neck. "Not a word, girl," she said. The wind carried far on the prairie, and tongues carried further. She swung into the saddle and rode home, heart heavy with secrets. That night, she sat by the hearth, coffee cooling untouched, mind circling the cave. To tell or not, townsfolk could help, but they'd also take, and if word reached the wrong ears, she'd be defending more than fences before long. Sleep came hard, broken by dreams of voices whispering underground, of coins rattling like chains. At dawn, Lacey saddled dust again, intent on checking cattle, yet unease gnawed. She rode a boundary fence, eyes scanning. That's when she saw it. Hoofprints, fresh, too close to her land. She dismounted, crouching. 3 riders, maybe 4, had skirted her property. Tracks cut deep, as if they lingered. Lacey's jaw tightened. Rustlers had been bold lately, stealing from neighbors. If they'd caught sight of the cave during the storm's washout, trouble might already be brewing. She spat in the dust. The West never sleeps. In town, folks greeted her with the usual mix of respect and suspicion. "Morning, Miss Harper," Jensen the storekeep called, tipping his hat. "Need flour? Wire?" Lacey nodded, keeping her face calm. Whispers swirled. She caught fragments. Storm opened something on her land, saw her riding near the ridge. Her stomach sank. Word had already spread, though no one knew details yet. She forced a smile, bought her supplies, and rode out. But as she mounted, she saw 3 men across the street watching her too closely. Their eyes weren't curious, they were calculating. She touched her Colt, heart steadying. That evening, Jonah Wilkes, a neighbor's boy, came by with his hound. Barely 12, he was bold as brass, always nosing around. "Miss Lacey," Pa says, "Storm uncovered a cave on your place. You see it?" She froze, then bent down, meeting his eager eyes. "Don't repeat everything you hear, Jonah. Some stories are better left alone." The boy grinned, unbothered. "If there's treasure, you'll be rich." She softened, tousling his hair. "Rich folks ain't always happy, kid. Go home before dark." He trotted off, but her worry deepened. If children knew already, men with darker aims surely knew too. That night, she barred her door, lantern burning low. Coyotes howled from the ridge, their cries mixing with the rattle of wind. Lacey sat at the table, Colt beside her, eyes on the shadows. Each creak of wood sounded like a footstep. The gold's weight pressed heavier than iron, though she hadn't carried a single coin. She thought of her father's words. The land gives, but it always asks in return. She whispered into the quiet. What will it ask this time? No answer came. Only the steady thrum of her own heart, beating in rhythm with the lonely night. Morning brought no peace. She rode out early, checking the herd. Dust pricked her ears, uneasy. Ahead, 2 steers lay dead, their hides carved, meat taken. Rage flared in Lacey's chest. Rustlers bold enough to slaughter on her ground. She knelt, inspecting tracks, boot prints, large, cigarette butts left behind. Careless men, thinking no one would challenge them. Her hand tightened on the reins. She couldn't prove they'd seen the cave, but she knew, if they hadn't yet, they soon would. And once they did, they wouldn't stop until the gold was theirs, or until she was buried beneath her own land. Back at the ranch, she found a note pinned to her door with a knife. Scrawled in crude letters, "Land ain't yours alone. Best share what's underneath." She ripped it free, blood simmering. Dust stamped nervously, sensing her mood. Lacey burned the note in the hearth, watching it curl into ash. She'd faced drought, wolves, and loneliness, but greed was the cruelest predator. She knew she couldn't fight faceless shadows forever, yet surrender wasn't in her blood. She loaded her rifle, cleaned her Colt, and saddled Dust. "They want to test me," she muttered. "Let 'em. This ranch has claws." The next days passed in tense silence. She worked fences, eyes always on the horizon. Jonah Wilkes stopped by again, sensing the tension. "You're different," he said bluntly. "Like you're carrying something heavy." She studied the boy. He was sharp, but too young for secrets. Still, his loyalty shone. "Jonah, if you see men near my ridge, you run home. Don't play hero." He puffed his chest. "I can help." Lacey crouched, gripping his shoulders. "Help by staying safe. Promise me." His eyes dropped, but he nodded. She kissed his forehead like a sister might. "Good boy. That's courage enough." One evening, riding near the cave, she saw smoke curling faintly from within. Panic struck. Had someone found it already? She dismounted, crept forward, rifle ready. But inside, the crate was untouched. Only a torch stub smoldered on the ground. Footprints crowded the dirt, leading deeper into the cave. She followed, every muscle taut. The tunnel twisted, revealing a second chamber she hadn't seen before. There, carved into the stone, were markings, symbols, circles, words, in Spanish, half erased by time. This wasn't just a mine. It was older, layered with secrets long before prospectors came, and now others knew it too. She backed out slowly, mind racing. The rustlers weren't chasing coins, they were chasing legends. If the markings hinted at more treasure, maps, history, they'd kill for it. Back in daylight, Lacey swallowed hard. She couldn't fight this alone forever, yet she also couldn't hand it over. This land was hers by sweat and blood. The wind carried faint laughter from the ridge. She froze. Shadows shifted between rocks watchers, too far for a shot, but close enough to make their point. She mounted Dust and rode hard home, heart hammering. The game had begun, and the stakes were no longer hers alone. That night, the rustlers came closer. She heard boots crunch outside, the creak of the porch. Colt in hand, she waited, breath still. A knock rattled the door, slow, mocking. "Evening, Miss Harper." A drawl called. "You've got something don't belong to you." Lacey's grip tightened. Silence was her answer. Footsteps retreated, then a voice chuckled. "We'll be back, and you'll wish you'd shared." The night swallowed them again. Lacey lowered her gun, sweat cold on her neck. They weren't just threatening, they were promising. And promises in the West were heavier than lead. Sleep was impossible. She sat at the table, staring at the empty chair across from her, imagining her father there. "What would you do, Pa?" she whispered. In her mind, she heard him laugh softly. "You'd stand, Lacey. You always did." Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. Fear was natural, surrender was not. She checked her rifle again, set extra rounds on the table, and waited for dawn. Dust nickered softly in the barn, the sound grounding her. She whispered back, "We'll hold. Whatever comes, we'll hold." The ranch seemed to listen, its silence heavy but loyal. At sunrise, Jensen rode out with news. Rustlers hit Wilkes' place last night, took 2 steers, near burned the barn. Lacey's stomach clenched. Jonah's family too close. Jensen eyed her carefully. Word is, they're circling your land. Some say it's the cave. Truth to it? She held his gaze. Storm unearthed something. What it is don't matter. What matters is, it's on my land, and I'll defend it. Jensen studied her, then nodded. Figured you would. Just know, you ain't alone. His words were kind, but Lacey knew better. In the end, a fight like this left one person standing. That evening, Lacey saddled Dust and rode to the ridge one last time. The cave loomed, silent, secrets tucked deep. She lit her lantern, stepping inside. The crate gleamed faintly, coins whispering promises. She touched them, then shoved the lid closed. Not yet, she murmured. Beyond, the markings in stone seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. She traced them with her fingers, heart steady. Whatever lay here was bigger than gold, bigger than her. And the rustlers knew it too. As she left, she whispered into the dark, If you want this land, you have to bleed for it. The rustlers did not wait long. 2 nights after their mocking knock, smoke curled on the horizon. Lacey saw it from her porch. Heart sinking, it was Wilkes's barn again. Flames clawing skyward. The message was clear. They could strike where they pleased, and she was next. Jonah rode over at dawn, cheeks streaked with soot. They're testing you, he said grimly. Lacey nodded, eyes hard. Then let's stop being tested. She saddled Dust, checked her rifle, and stared toward the ridge. If they want what's under my land, they'll have to meet me there, on my ground, my terms. By evening, she had prepared. She carried sacks from the barn, old grain, stones, anything heavy. Jonah helped, eager though, afraid. What are these for? He asked. Distraction, Lacey answered. When men are greedy, they stop looking where they should. She showed him how to set them at the cave entrance, like bait. If they think the gold is easy, they'll rush. And that's when we make our stand, Jonah swallowed, gripping his little revolver. I won't run this time. Lacey's eyes softened. Don't be foolish either. You're my lookout. Courage isn't dying for land. It's living to protect it. That night, lanterns bobbed on the ridge. Lacey crouched by the cave mouth, Jonah hidden higher up among rocks. She could hear the men's voices, rough, eager, impatient. She knows, one muttered. She's hiding it. Another spat. Won't matter. Tonight we take it. They dismounted, boots crunching. The leader, tall with a scar across his jaw, laughed low. 1 woman and a child against 6 men? We'll be rich come dawn. Lacey tightened her grip on the rifle. She wasn't shaking. In fact, she felt calmer than she had in months. Tonight, one way or another, the game would end. They found the sacks first, tearing them open. Grain? One snarled. Rocks? Another cursed. Confusion rippled. That's when Lacey stepped out, rifle leveled. Evening, boys, she called. Looking for something? Their heads jerked toward her. The scarred leader grinned. We were. Seems you've found it first. He raised his pistol, but before he could fire, Jonah's warning shot ran from above, a crack that echoed across stone. The men ducked instinctively. Lacey fired, her bullet smashing a lantern. Flames whooshed upward, blinding them. Chaos broke loose shouts. Smoke, hooves stomping nervously. The trap had sprung, and the night belonged to her. Gunfire split the dark. Lacey fired steady, each shot placed with purpose. Jonah shouted warnings from above, his smaller revolver cracking loud. Dust reared at the noise, but held steady, trained by years of storms and wolves. 2 rustlers fell scrambling, another fled wounded. The scarred leader pressed forward, shouting, "The gold! Find the gold!" In the confusion, one man slipped past toward the deeper tunnel. Lacey cursed if he found the chamber. The secret would be out. She sprinted after him, boots striking stone, lantern swinging. The chase echoed in darkness, her breath and his footfalls the only rhythm. The tunnel opened to the second chamber, its carved symbols flickering in lantern glow. The rustler stood before the wall, stunned. "What in blazes?" he muttered, reaching to trace the markings. Lacey leveled her rifle. "Step back," he spun, sneer twisting. "This ain't just gold, is it?" He lunged, knife flashing. She fired. The sound cracked like thunder, his body collapsing into dust. Lantern light trembled over the symbols. Lacey lowered her rifle, chest heaving. This wasn't just a mine. It was history, maybe sacred, maybe cursed. Whatever it wasn't meant for thieves, and she swore to guard it. When she emerged, the fight was nearly done. Jonah stood tall on the ridge, revolver smoking. 2 rustlers lay bound, cursing. The scarred leader alone remained, gun pointed at Lacey, his face twisted with rage. "You think you can stand against men like me?" he spat. "The land ain't for women. It ain't for children. It's for those strong enough to take it." Lacey stepped closer, eyes fierce. "Then you'll never own it. Because land don't belong to thieves, it belongs to those who love it enough to bleed for it." Her rifle barked. His pistol dropped. Silence swallowed the ridge. Jonah scrambled down, breathless. "Are you hurt?" Lacey shook her head, though her hands trembled now that it was over. "No worse than before." They tied the wounded, dragging them toward their horses. Lacey glanced once at the cave, its dark mouth yawning behind her. The gold remained, untouched, hidden still. She knew then she would never spend it, never flaunt it. Some treasures weren't meant for pockets. Some were meant to test the soul. "We'll cover the cave tomorrow," she told Jonah, "stone by stone, till no one can find it." The boy nodded solemnly. Secrets needed guarding. The sheriff rode out at dawn, answering Jensen's call. He surveyed the scene, 2 bound rustlers, another dead, signs of battle in the dirt. He whistled low. "Heard you were tough, Miss Harper. Didn't reckon you were this tough." Lacey shrugged. "I just held my ground." The sheriff tipped his hat. "Ground worth holding, I'd say." He took the prisoners to town, warning her more might come. Lacey nodded. She knew. But she also knew something else. She wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever the land threw at her, she would answer. The West respected those who stood tall, and she had. Days passed, quieter now. Jonah grew restless but proud. He practiced chores without complaint, rode dust with more confidence, even spoke in town without flinching under whispers. Folks eyed him differently too, less as a boy, more as a partner. Jensen clapped his shoulder once and said, "Your ma raised you right." Jonah glanced at Lacey, who smiled faintly. She wasn't his mother, but the bond between them had settled deep, like roots after rain. In the evenings, when they shared bread by lantern light, She realized the cave hadn't just uncovered gold. It had uncovered family she didn't expect. One night, as they sat by the fire, Jonah asked, "Why didn't you take the coins? You could be rich. Leave all this behind." Lacey stared into the flames, thinking, "Riches are heavy, Jonah. They make men greedy, make women hunted. This ranch may not shine, but is honest. And honest things last." Jonah considered, then nodded slowly. "Guess I'd rather be honest than hunted." She smiled, pride swelling. "That's the right answer, boy." For the first time, she felt peace settle in her chest. The cave had tested her, but she had chosen the path her father would have wanted. The next morning, they began sealing the cave. Stone by stone, they filled the entrance, sweat dripping, muscles aching. Jonah grumbled, but worked without stopping. "Feels like burying something alive," he muttered. Lacey paused, hand on the rock. "Not burying, protecting. Some things are too dangerous for daylight." By sundown, the opening was nearly gone, only a faint seam left. Lacey stood back, satisfied. "There, now it's ours, but safe." Jonah leaned on his shovel, chest heaving. "Think they'll come back?" She glanced at the horizon. "Maybe, but next time, they won't find anything but stone. And that would be enough." Word spread in town of her stand. Some praised her. Others whispered that a woman shouldn't live alone on cursed land. But whispers no longer weighed on Lacey. She walked through the store with head high, Jonah at her side, dust tied outside. Jensen grinned, handing her supplies. "You've got grit, Harper, more than most men I know." She tipped her hat, replying, "It's grit or nothing out here." The townsfolk nodded, some with respect, some with envy, but none dared test her again. In the eyes of the West, she had proven herself stronger than storms, stronger than greed. As winter neared, the valley quieted. Snow dusted the hills, and nights grew long. Lacey and Jonah settled into rhythm chores, stories by firelight, the comfort of survival. Yet sometimes, when the wind howled, she thought of the symbols carved deep inside the cave. They weren't just markings of miners. They were older, carrying secrets beyond gold. She wondered if someday Jonah would ask to see them, or if future generations might rediscover them. For now, she let the mystery rest. Some truths weren't meant for hurried hearts. The land held them, and that was enough. One evening, Jonah surprised her by bringing flowers, wild prairie blooms, scraggly but bright. "For the table," he mumbled, embarrassed. Lacey laughed softly, placing them in an old jar. "They're perfect." As the lantern flickered, she watched him eat, shoulders less burdened, eyes less haunted. She realized then how much he'd changed. He wasn't just a boy hiding from the world anymore. He was learning to live, to claim his place. And she wasn't just a lonely cowgirl clinging to a dying ranch. Together, they had become something more. Family, built not by blood, but by choice. Spring returned, bringing color back to the land. Grass grew tall, calves frisked, and the ranch pulsed with new life. Jonah worked harder than ever, laughing when dust nuzzled him, swearing he'd be the best writer in the county. Lacey watched with quiet pride. Sometimes she caught neighbors at the fence, watching too, no longer scornful but respectful. The ranch had transformed in their eyes not a cursed place, but a stronghold. And Lacey had transformed too. She was no longer just a woman holding on. She was a guardian of land, of secrets, of the boy who had become her reason. One afternoon, Jensen stopped by. "There's talk the government may want to survey your land," he said cautiously. "Folks whisper about old markings and caves." Lacey's stomach nodded. She forced calm into her voice. "There's nothing here but stone." Jensen studied her, then nodded slowly. "Figured you'd say that. Just be ready." When he left, Jonah asked, "What if they find out?" Lacey placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Then we guard it again. Secrets don't belong to men with maps. They belong to the land, and we belong to it." Jonah nodded, eyes steady. He believed her. That night, she dreamed of her father again. He stood at the cave, lantern in hand, smiling. "You chose right, girl," he said. "Not all treasure is gold." She woke with tears on her cheeks, but also with peace. She understood now. The cave hadn't been a curse. It had been a test. And she had passed not by taking, but by holding, by choosing family over fortune. She rose quietly, stoked the fire, and watched Jonah sleep. In his steady breathing, she heard the promise of tomorrow. And for the first time in years, she welcomed it. By summer, the ranch thrived. Neighbors came to trade. Children played near the fence. Laughter returned to the valley. Jonah grew taller, stronger, his voice deepening, his steps sure. Lacey sometimes caught him glancing at the horizon with the same hunger she once had. "You'll ride far one day," she told him, "but always remember where you started." He grinned. "Right here, at the $1 ranch," she chuckled. "That's right." And in that simple exchange, she felt the truth settle. The land had given her more than she'd ever dreamed. It had given her purpose and someone to share it with. On a quiet evening, as the sun bled gold over the prairie, Lacey sat on the porch. Jonah beside her. Dust grazed in the pasture, tail flicking lazily. The ranch stretched wide, steady, no longer haunted by whispers. Jonah leaned back, sighing. "Do you think we'll ever tell anyone about the cave?" Lacey smiled faintly. "Maybe one day, but for now, it's our secret, and some secrets are better kept close." They sat in silence, watching the sky turn violet, listening to the land breathe. For the first time, Lacey Harper felt not like a widow of the world, but like its guardian.